Alright, I've got a little different project for today. A friend of mine owns this 2001 Toyota Highlander 4-wheel drive, and he took it to a shop to have an alignment done after getting some new tires, and they couldn't do the alignment, they said, because the tie rods were rusted. And this vehicle is from Ohio, so it doesn't surprise me. And he asked them what it would cost to fix it, and they told him $400. So he didn't want to spend that much money, and he asked me if I could do it, and I said sure. So I went and I bought the materials. I've already done the driver's side, but I want to show you how it's done on the passenger side. There's your outer tie rod, the inner tie rod, and I'll show you how those go together as I move along. Also, I went to Advanced Auto Parts and I rented kit 26 inner tie rod removal kit and kit 3, which is your 5-piece front end service kit. That's for doing the actually the ball joint of the tie rod. So I'll get started on it and show you how it goes. Okay, first step I did obviously was jack it up, pull the wheel off, throw a jacks down underneath. I know it's not making contact. I'll adjust that in a minute. But I took a look at it, and you can see where they had really put some, I don't know what they use, vice grips or something to try to hold that and break the nut loose. After taking the other one apart, I do know that the ball joint on that end is worn, so it's worth replacing anyway. And I'm just going to go ahead and take care of this side. First steps will be removing the cotter pin. There we go, removing the cotter pin, and the nut, breaking this loose, and then breaking off everything else on that end. Of course, it's got a clamp right here that'll have to come loose, and then further in, and I'll show you that in a minute, there's another clamp that holds that end of the boot. I have to take that end loose and slide the boot back this way to gain access to the nut. Okay, I removed the nut off of the outer tie rod end. I selected this separator out of the kit. I just want to show you how nice this works. That's all it took. I did not loosen that up. That's all it took. That's where it pays to have tools, even if you got to rent them. That's all I need out of that kit. So now I'll take this off and finish separating everything and move on. That should come right out of there. Yep. Alright. Now that this end is out, on the other end here, I'll show you with my flashlight, kind of hard to see, you'll see a little, I don't know, nub sticking up there. And basically that's just a clamp. And what you have to do is take a screwdriver, stick it in that bit of that hole right there, and separate it. And if you don't tear it up, you can reuse it and just squeeze it back together with a pair of extended well, in fact, they're long needle nose pliers. So I'm going to separate that, and then I can pull the boot off. Maybe that'll help you understand a little more. You can just see I just turned a little bit, separated the clamp, and now that boot will pull off, and I get access to the nut that holds the inner tie rod to the rack and pinion. Now that the boot is pulled back, you can see this odd shaped nut where that ball goes in. But what I really want to point out, it's really hard to show you with this, is see if I can get it in there. On the back side, right there, is a flange, and it looks kind of like a washer, and that's really the lock mechanism. When this is tightened down, that gets bent back over it, and it acts as a lock. So we've got to rotate those up. There's one on top and one on the bottom, and then I can get the tool on there to break it loose. Well, to make this a lot simpler, I broke loose the outer tie rod, and I removed the boot, and you can see that little clamp I was telling you about a little better. And now the next step is I'm going to take this tool out of that kit there, and that'll slip up around like that, and then I'll take this handle, which is also out of that toolkit that slips around the inner tie rod, and these two hook together. And the next step is I'll take a ratchet or a breaker bar and put in that end and break it loose and remove that. And there it is. Now that I've unthreaded it, I wanted to point out there's that little washer thing I was talking about that was bent back over these two flat spots. The other thing is, you'll see there's two little notches. You can kind of see them sticking up there a little bit. Those are designed to notch into or slide into those two cutouts, and that's just to keep everything from not turning when this goes back together. The important part of this too is all this gets thrown away. The new one, which that nut doesn't belong there, that nut goes on the end. The new one comes with that same deal, that little washer. So you just slip that on the end, thread that in, and then those little tabs line up. Once you get to that point, slip the tool back on and tighten everything up. And at this point, after I tighten up that nut, I used the hammer on one side of that little washer deal. I was able to tap the edge over, and the other one I used the end of my ratchet because it's a pretty tight fit. And then I slipped the boot on and I pushed it all the way in first, so I didn't worry about the outer clamp. I went to that inner one, and see if I can show you. It's kind of hard to see, but I clamped that back down, and then I stretched the boot out. There's a groove on that shaft, and I snapped it into the shaft and then put the clamp back on. I should also point out that I had the wheels turned all the way to the left in this case, so that this was extended as far as I could get it. If I tried to do it otherwise, I'd be even further in. So at this point, I'm going to put the outer tie rod on. I'll adjust based on the length of the thread that's available from the original, as if they were still assembled, and it gets me close so that it can be driven to the alignment shop. And there it is. I should point out too that in this outer kit it comes with a Zerk fitting, so be careful putting that in. And of course you've got your castellated nut, cotter pin, and double check, make sure everything's tight, and then it can go to the shop and get the alignment done.